Welcome. Thanks for assessing this last session of today. Bienvenidos todos. This presentation will be about the WikiWijs project. Some of my colleagues already informed you to some extent about the WikiWijs project, so I might be replicating some of the stuff there, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. The title of the presentation is WikiWijs Professionalization Portal, Studying Teacher Needs for Using and Arranging OER. I'm giving this presentation on behalf of three other colleagues, one of which is present here, Hans Hummel, so he can assist me if some difficult questions might arise later on. Suzanne asked me to introduce myself and the institution I work for. I work for the CELSTEC, that's the Center of Learning Sciences and Technologies, which is the innovative motor of the Open University of the Netherlands. I already worked there for quite some time, and as Wim Westra told in his keynote this morning, the Open University has always had a keen eye on open educational resources, and during my presentation, just when our rector is walking in, I will say something about some of the other projects that we have been involved with. But as I said, this presentation will focus on professionalization. So far we've heard a lot of talks about accessing and making it technically available. My talk will be on what do the users actually need to make all these interesting bits and pieces into meaningful education. With the risk again of replicating some of the other presentations, I thought it would be wise to say something about the overall aim of WikiWijs, which is listed to be a project to create a digital internet-based platform to bring together, share and develop digital learning materials for all educational sectors. And then at the end, it's emphasized that it's a project for, from and by teachers. So what's really important for WikiWijs is that teachers feel committed, feel part of the project. And that's easier said than done, but I would like to stress it here because that's basically the underlying idea of the project. Then within WikiWijs there are 5 sub-projects, and I'm mainly talking on behalf of the professionalization project, which is focusing on teacher needs and preferences in using open educational resources. All good things exist from 3 parts. I would like to do the same. I would like to describe the context of the project, and in that respect I will tell something about other related projects also. Then I will come to the research part. Basically what we did is do 2 types of research. We looked into some existing research into professionalization needs for teachers, and I will present some of the main studies there. And we executed an extra additional survey study, and I will describe some results from that study. And then at the end I'll try to get to some conclusions, and there's opportunity for you to ask me what was not clear or anything you would like to know. Not anything, but within limits. The desk research was mainly dealing with the situation as is, how much usage is there going on, while we thought it would be nice to base our policies on. Actually this presentation is already placed in a session on policy and strategy, so especially the survey study was mainly dealing with future needs and preferences. So the difference between the desk research part and the survey study part is that the desk research was kind of describing the state as it was, and in the survey study we asked some specific questions about ICT and about future needs and preferences. I included a picture of the Sagrada Familia, and I have to be honest here. I actually stole this one from a presentation, a blog from one of my colleagues who wrote a blog about communities. And communities, I think, is a very important aspect. And he compared communities to the construction of the Sagrada Familia, which is a very open process, like open educational resource movement, but still should be sound. Sometimes, to my humble observation, there is a problem with making meaningful wholes out of all those pieces of sand, which are called open educational resources, into meaningful wholes. This has been described by Wim Wester in his keynote, that we should make it into learning activities. It has been described by Robert Schuro, and he talked in this same room about converting them into learning trajectories. And actually I would like to say the same. It can be very open. It could be that the construction is still moving on, that you can't really tell what would be the final cathedral, the final educational product, but it's still, and it still should be educationally sound. So that's basically the mantra I'm repeating here. Related projects. It has also been mentioned that in when was it, Fred? In 2004, 2005 that the Opener project was launched? 6, because it was mentioned 2004 earlier today. It has been mentioned today that especially for the Netherlands, that was a successful project, attracting a lot of attention. This is a screen dump from a project called OpenU. And this is trying to go one step further in making open educational resources available. Actually, OpenU is the manifestation of a new business model which can be connected to using open educational resources. What the Open University tries to establish right now is to become a kind of an educational broker, offering material, but also a new market model. So OpenU tries to combine free and courses that have to be paid for. Right now we're launching 2 pilots, one in the domain of learning sciences and another one will be launched pretty soon on the domain of informatics. I'll not get into details, especially because it's all Dutch. This is a screen grab from WikiWijs, and this is a screen dump from a subsite which is dealing with professionalisation. And what you see on the left-hand side is that there are a number of search parameters you can look for, like costs, the level of teaching, the type of teaching, type of learning materials. So for instance, some are manuals, some are open assignments, some are things like tools you need to construct digital learning materials, etc. And at the right-hand side for you, you'll see the final results of your search. Some contextual remarks before I get to the studies and results we found. When I mentioned that I have some worries about open educational resources as being too fine-grained and not connected, I came across some literature comparing OER with the learning object movement. And the learning object movement always had a keen eye for combining bits into meaningful wholes, and it has become the predecessor of learning technology specifications like content packaging, of learning design, which really offer models for you to combine resources into meaningful wholes. Some authors state that OER has been too much focusing on open access and has been neglecting the need to really make them into meaningful wholes. And maybe this is for the discussion, but it could be interesting to look at the learning object movement in that respect. When I was mentioning the picture from the Sagrada Familia, I also mentioned the needs of communities of practice for teachers in this case to work with OER. For instance, Stephen Downes has stressed the importance of communities around OER. And what struck me in particular was that he compared emergent versus community models. An emergent model, how should I explain it? For instance, eBay is a good example of a emergent model. There's not really a difference in power or expertise. Everybody's the same right. It's the wisdom of the crowds. And what emerges is which people become highly reputed, which things become bought, boast, things like that. But there's no centrality. There's no real professional. There's not a community of professionals. It's just people that want to buy things. And the same goes for Twitter and social network sites. I think for education, especially when there's a formal component, you should have openness, but in a kind of structured way. And that's where the community models come in, which are really communities of professionals working together with the same common purpose. And that's where you may add some structure, etc. So that's the first suggestion I would like to bring forward here. Then the third one, before getting into the studies, is that it might be a open door to enter, but open educational resources has a specific meaning, especially when you use them in education. Open does not just mean access. Educational does not just mean that it's usable for education, but it also mean that it's putting the learner on stage, that it's learner-centered. And resources is not just the resources as such, but it should also include facilities for learning to use them for dialogue. There again come into place the communities. Okay, desk research. Actually in the Netherlands, because I'm focusing myself to studies that have been executed in the Netherlands, 3 main monitoring studies were executed. One by SLO, which is called the Leermiddelen Monitor, monitoring learning materials. The other was 4 in balans, that's hard to translate, 4 in balance. And last one was a pre-test we executed within the WikiWijs project, and I'll try to give some highlights of what we found in that desk research. All 3 were executed with pretty large groups of respondents, so above 1,000 respondents. What we found that the sustainability of commercially available methods really differs between VO, which is secondary education, and PO, which is primary education. That's Dutch terminology, sorry for that. So this already shows something about the tendency of people that want to use open educational resources as an addition to the commercially available methods. That's the second bullet, main drivers for using OER found were making content more actual, making innovative developments in didactics more prevalent, with 80% of the respondents, and the same amount of persons replied that better alignment with concrete learner needs was made better possible with using OER. So these 2 are the main drivers for using it. While people state at the same time that OER should enable more learning-centered, more active, more learning activity-driven learning, there's also an observation that right now it's not really possible to an extent that we would like to have that, because some of the largest portion of OER still are not suitable to make it to use it into active learning. But there's a heartfelt need to use OER for more active learning. What's a big problem that's being stated in this desk research report is that a lot of teachers have problems integrating OER with other topics and learning goals. The second study found that teachers felt that they had to learn more about digital didactics, so that's the way I try to summarize it. They need to acquire more media literacy and information skills, especially when searching the internet. And one pretty specific thing is that they need support for using smartboards. That's the null mating, the zero test we executed for WikiWijs with a group of 1,382 teachers. There we found that the usage of digital material is steadily growing, but in 2009 it was like 18% for secondary education and 32% for MBO, which is the Dutch equivalent of secondary vocational education. But as we speak, I think these numbers might have risen a bit more. All the teachers, that it's the group of 40 plus, feel more excited to use digital material. And interesting to note is that female teachers are more inclined to use existing, while male teachers are more inclined to develop and arrange new digital materials. Okay, I'll get how are we doing the timekeeper? Timekeeper's not. Suzanne, how are we doing in time-wise? Okay, we've got time now. Results from the additional questionnaire study survey, which was carried out with a group of 375 teachers, again coming from different branches of education, from primary till higher education. Again, there's an interesting factor, which is age. Older teachers perceive a bigger need for specific didactical professionalization for digital material. It's a pretty highly significant factor we found. And they also face more anxiety, especially because 40% of them until now never have used digital materials. Another finding we would like to mention is that all the teachers perceive a need for getting better access to digital materials. Somehow it seems that although it's readily available, some don't really know ways to find it and don't miss the tools to get access to online teaching material. Female teachers, again, in this study we also found the same thing. They are more inclined to use it, while male teachers are more inclined to develop new digital materials. And another thing is that professional development should primarily be aimed at actualizing content and didactic professionalization. And all is aimed at strengthening educational practices. I'm already reaching the end of my presentation. This is just a table with some of the questionnaire items that were specifically focusing on future needs and preferences for didactical professionalization. And I would like to end with some conclusions we might draw from these preliminary, because I have to say they're preliminary, and as we speak we're also investing some other questionnaire research, so maybe in a couple of months we will have some more data available. But preliminary conclusions that can be reached here are the following. While the open educational resources movement is very open, we at the same time have to establish that it needs to be and remain open, but at the same time structured. And we should take note of some of the things that have been going on in the learning objects movement and the learning technologies specification movement also. While we have been stressing, that's the first one, while we have been stressing on making it technically available, accessible, metadating it, etc., using vocabularies, that's important, but only part of the story. I think we've reached the point now that pedagogical professionality, modeling it, making it into meaningful learning activities is another important thing, and especially looking at teachers, I think they need support in learning that, because it's one thing to find them, but to make them into meaningful wholes, that's a completely different ballgame, especially when you're talking about competence-driven, experiential types of learning. That's complex. We have to be humble because we found that it's still early days for policies aimed at. We added some questions asking teachers, what does your school or institute do? And a lot of them told me, responded that there sometimes were personnel policies in place, but they were not really being implemented yet. So it's still early days when it comes to integral personal policy management. And not much systematic professionalization is going on, helping teachers to learn to work with and to develop digital learning materials using OER. And I think if we do not overcome these kind of professional measures, conditions, that reluctance, which has always been a very strong factor in educational innovation, will keep prevailing. So I think it's important in the years to come to place some more attention on to professionalization, especially when it comes to didactic professionalization. Those were my worries and suggestions I would like to make. So there's time for questions now. There's ample time for questions now. Micro is aquí.
Hi, could I ask you, you defined all the teachers as over 40?
I defined all the teachers as over 40, but that's a pretty ambiguous threshold. Yeah.
Okay, and can you clarify again what was the difference between male and female teachers? Because you had something about the females were more
Inclined
ready
to use
to
existing OER.
existing OER.
Yeah, and
okay.
males were more inclined to start using, developing,
their own
arranging new digital learning environment.
Okay, thank you very much.
What would you say that are the critical competencies around this digital didactics or this educational modeling, especially in a weak environment?
Well, of course, this is the million-dollar question. When I was attending one of the first sessions made by Robert Schuller, he emphasized within this project that it's really important not to consider bits and pieces as independent wholes, but they finally should become part of a continuing learning trajectory. So at the end, the goal of learning is to achieve certain learning objectives, and you can reach those final states by passing through intermediate learning objectives. And I think, so you're talking about learning trajectories, you're talking about learning paths, but within each learning activity, there should also be a representation of some of the constituent parts. I mean, just to give you a text is not enough. If you want to learn, you at least need learner support. You need a clear learning objective state so that you know what to look for. If you are reading a book of Carlos Luis Zafón, which I'm reading about Barcelona right now, just as an interesting novel to learn about Barcelona, you will read it in a different way than if you would get an assignment to learn about the grammatical composition using various sidelines. In the book, so you will look at it in another way. So you need a learning objective, you need resources, you need environments where to find other things. Actually, I'm also talking about educational modeling. For instance, the IMS specification we made called learning design actually deals with these kind of things. So if you're interested in this topic, look for educational modeling, how to combine different bits and pieces into meaningful educational wholes. So I'm just mentioning a couple of things: assignments, resources, learning objectives, learning support, question assessments. It's not just a Word file. It's not just a video, but it's also what to do with the video, how to assess if you have understood what the learning object states, etc. So does that answer?
Yes. Let me follow up on that. But how do you promote a teacher to build this kind of modeling? Really, my question was, how do you stimulate and motivate teachers to construct?
I think teachers are in need of tooling, and one way to motivate them is to make them aware that it's important to make a meaningful whole. Another thing is to provide them tools. You could think, for instance, about schemes or algorithms or checklists. Offer them checklists or tools which make them aware of what to look for. They're always will always be in control and have to be in control, but it will help you to have a checklist, for instance. So in the end it's pretty simple, but the construction of the tools and the checklist, that's the hard job, of course. And but there's some available, and to my opinion, it's not being used enough. Okay.
The difference between men and women. How did you get to those results?
Well, there were just a couple of questions. It could be that this research was not really represented, but it's striking that we found the same result in two studies. So we basically asked them questions like, are you using existing material? And another question would be, are you intending or already using an OER to make new digital materials? And we had some controlling variables like age, sex, prior knowledge, etc. And what we found was like we presented. So it's basically what we found, and it seems to be a significant difference. I don't know what's the deeper meaning of that, but...
So for you, in that study, does it seem like a reference?
As a preference?
A reference.
A what?
A reference data to achieve, to take in consideration the difference between men and women.
Well, it's interesting because, well, the world consists of male and female people, so I think we have to take care of this. For instance, if you look at the way games are being played, that's another topic, but you see all differences between males and females also. It's the males that want to develop things and investigate things, while females, more or less, I'm generalizing, of course I have to be careful, want to use it to find things, yeah. So these are general findings, and it might be that people present here do not comply to those findings, but it's just what we found, and it was highly significant, so cannot make more or less out of that. It's interesting.